when silence spoke louder than weapons. The Caltharian Dominion had conquered 847 star systems across 12 galactic sectors. Their military force was legendary. Their strategic planning was flawless. Their diplomatic protocols were considered the most sophisticated in known space. They had subjugated 156 different intelligent species without ever losing a single negotiation. Their secret was simple. They never negotiated at all. The Caltharians believed in absolute certainty. Every interaction followed precise protocols that had been refined over 3,000 years. When they arrived at a new world, they delivered exactly 47 statements in a specific order. Each statement was designed to demonstrate overwhelming superiority and the futility of resistance. By statement 42, most species were ready to surrender. By statement 47, surrender was always complete. The protocol had never failed. Not once in 3 millennia. Commander Zeth-Kal stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominion's Will, watching the small blue planet called Earth grow larger on the view screen. He was a Caltharian of the highest military caste, standing nearly 8 feet tall with skin that shimmered like liquid mercury. His 4 arms moved with precise efficiency as he reviewed the invasion protocols one final time. Standard formation, he commanded. Begin Protocol Alpha 7 on my mark. His second officer, Vreltun, acknowledged the order. The fleet moved into position around Earth's moon. Exactly 127 warships, each one capable of destroying a continent. The formation was designed to be visible from Earth's surface. To inspire awe and terror in equal measure. Zeth-Kal activated the communication array. In exactly 90 seconds, he would begin delivering the 47 statements. Earth's leaders would respond with confusion, then fear, then desperate bargaining, then inevitable surrender. Just like every other species before them. The communication channel opened. Zeth-Kal could see the human delegation on his screen. They had gathered in something called the United Nations building. Hundreds of humans crowded into a large chamber, their faces showing the expected mixture of fear and uncertainty. Zeth-Kal began speaking. His words were automatically translated into every Earth language simultaneously. Statement 1, we are the Caltharian Dominion. We have conquered 847 star systems. Resistance is futile. He paused for exactly 4.3 seconds, as protocol demanded. The humans said nothing. Statement 2, our military capability exceeds your entire civilization by a factor of 10,000 to 1. You cannot defend yourselves. Another 4.3-second pause. Still, the humans remained silent. Zeth-Kal continued through the statements methodically. Statement 10. Statement 20. Statement 30. Each one carefully crafted to demonstrate superiority and inevitability. Each one designed to break the spirit of resistance. The humans never interrupted. They never asked questions. They simply watched and listened with expressions that Zeth-Kal found difficult to read. By statement 40, most species were begging for mercy or demanding impossible terms they knew would be rejected. By statement 45, they were offering everything they had in exchange for survival. But the humans remained silent. Zeth-Kal delivered statement 47, the final declaration before formal terms of surrender were presented. You have 24 Earth hours to accept our terms. Refusal will result in the systematic destruction of your major population centers. This is your only warning. He stopped speaking and waited. Protocol dictated that he would now wait exactly 60 seconds for the initial response. That response was always some form of acceptance, followed by desperate attempts to negotiate better terms. The human delegation conferred quietly among themselves for several seconds. Then one man stood up. He was unremarkable by human standards. Middle-aged, average height, wearing a simple suit. His name, according to the translation matrix, was Dr. James Morrison, and he was identified as a linguist and communications specialist. Dr. Morrison looked directly at the camera. His expression was calm, almost serene. And then he spoke a single sentence. We're not interested. The impossible response. The bridge of dominions will fell silent. Every Caltharian officer stared at their screens in confusion. Vrelton was the first to speak. Commander, the translation matrix must be malfunctioning. That response doesn't match any known pattern. Zethkal's 4 hands moved rapidly across his console, checking systems. The translation is accurate. They said, they're not interested. Not interested in what? Vrelton asked. Not interested in survival? That makes no logical sense. Zethkal replayed the moment 3 times. Each time, the human's words were the same. 4 simple words delivered with absolute certainty. No fear. No hesitation. No negotiation. Just, refusal. This is unprecedented, Zethkal said slowly. No species has ever responded this way. Protocol doesn't account for this. Then what do we do? Vrelton asked. That was the question. The 47 statements were designed to lead to negotiation of surrender terms. But the humans hadn't engaged with the negotiation at all. They had simply declined to participate. Zethkal consulted the protocol manual, a document that contained responses to every conceivable situation encountered in 3,000 years of conquest. He searched for anything similar to the current scenario. There was nothing. Re-establish communication, Zethkal ordered. I will clarify the situation. The channel opened again. Dr. Morrison was still standing, still calm. Behind him, the human delegation appeared remarkably composed for beings facing extinction. You misunderstand, Zethkal said. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of reality. You will submit to Caltharian rule or be destroyed. Those are your only options. Dr. Morrison tilted his head slightly. We understand perfectly. And we're still not interested. Not interested in survival? Zethkal felt his frustration growing, an emotion that was unprofessional and unworthy of a Caltharian commander. Oh, we're very interested in survival, Dr. Morrison replied. We're just not interested in your 47 statements, your protocols, or your demands. You came here expecting us to follow a script. We don't do scripts. Vrelton leaned toward Zethkal and whispered. Commander, perhaps we should demonstrate our capability. Destroy an uninhabited island or something small. Show them we're serious. But Zethkal was staring at Dr. Morrison with growing realization. The human hadn't refused out of ignorance or bravado. He had refused because he understood something the Caltharians had overlooked. The entire Protocol Alpha 7 was built on an assumption. That every species valued survival above all else. That fear of annihilation would override every other consideration. That when faced with overwhelming force, rational beings would always choose submission over death. But what if a species didn't consider those the only options? Dr. Morrison, Zethkal said carefully. Please explain what you mean by not interested. The human explanation. Dr. Morrison smiled slightly. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a teacher about to explain something to a student who hadn't been paying attention. Let me tell you a story, Dr. Morrison said. About 300 years ago, we humans nearly destroyed ourselves. We had weapons that could end all life on Earth. We came very close to using them. But we didn't. Do you know why? Zethkal said nothing. This was not part of any known protocol. Because we realized something important, Dr. Morrison continued. We realized that survival is only valuable if you can live with yourself afterward. We realized that some things are worth dying for. Freedom. Dignity. The right to choose our own path. These things matter more than simple survival. He gestured to the hundreds of humans behind him. You came here with your 47 statements. You told us we have no choice but to submit. You're wrong. We always have a choice. We can choose to fight even when we know we'll lose. We can choose to die free rather than live as slaves. That's what makes us human. That's illogical, Vrelton said quietly. Choosing death over life serves no purpose. It serves the most important purpose of all, Dr. Morrison replied. It tells the universe that we existed. That we mattered. That we chose our own fate rather than accepting one imposed on us. You may destroy our cities. You may kill billions of us. But you'll never make us submit. Because submission requires consent, and we don't consent. Zethkal felt something he had never experienced before in 40 years of military service. Uncertainty. The protocols were clear. Demonstrate superiority. Offer terms. Accept surrender. But the protocols assumed that all species would eventually surrender when faced with certain death. The humans were suggesting that they wouldn't. This is your final warning, Zethkal said, though the words felt hollow even as he spoke them. Submit or be destroyed. Dr. Morrison's expression didn't change. We've already given you our answer. We're not interested in your ultimatum. If you want to destroy us, go ahead. But you won't conquer us. You'll just prove that the Caltharian Dominion is no different than any other empire that destroys what it cannot control. He paused, then added. And that information will spread across the galaxy. Every species you've conquered will know. The mighty Caltharians, who claim to be civilized and sophisticated, who talk about protocols and order, are really just bullies who destroy anyone who says no. That's the legacy you'll create here. The communication channel closed from the Earth side. The humans had ended the conversation on their own terms. Zethkal stood in silence, staring at the blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders. Protocol dictated what should happen next. Begin the destruction. Make an example. Show the galaxy what happens to species that refuse to submit. But something made him hesitate. Commander? Vrelton asked. Should we proceed with orbital bombardment? Zethkal didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled up files on human history. Their wars. Their conflicts. Their stubborn, persistent refusal to accept defeat even when logic said they should. He found records of humans fighting impossible battles. Defending positions they couldn't hold. Choosing death over surrender again and again throughout their history. The Battle of Thermopylae. The Siege of Stalingrad. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Alamo. Bunker Hill. Countless examples of humans choosing to fight and die rather than submit. It wasn't bravado. It was their nature. Commander? Vrelton repeated. Your orders? Zethkal realized something that terrified him. If they destroyed Earth, the humans would die. But they would die having never submitted. The Caltharian perfect record would be broken. For the first time in 3,000 years, a species would resist to the very end. And worse, Dr. Morrison was right. Word would spread. Every conquered species would hear about the humans who chose death over submission. Some of them might start wondering if they had made the wrong choice. If maybe dignity was worth more than survival. The Dominion could destroy Earth. But they couldn't make the humans submit. And without submission, the entire foundation of Caltharian expansion was threatened. Hold position, Zethkal said quietly. I need to consult with the High Command. The Council of Certainty. The High Command of the Caltharian Dominion met in the Great Chamber of Absolutes, a vast space where decisions affecting trillions of beings were made with mathematical precision. 7 High Commanders sat in a circle, their mercury-like skin reflecting the soft blue light that filled the chamber. Zethkal stood in the center, presenting his report on the Earth situation. He had expected immediate orders to proceed with destruction. Instead, he found the High Commanders deeply troubled. High Commander Thelvan spoke first. She was the oldest Caltharian in active service, having overseen 200 successful conquests personally. This human, Dr. Morrison. You say he refused to engage with our protocol at all? Correct, High Commander. He simply stated they were not interested. When I clarified that submission was mandatory, he indicated they would choose death instead. Impossible, said High Commander Reknal. All species choose survival when faced with extinction. This is a fundamental law of nature. Yet the humans appear to be an exception, Zethkal said carefully. I have reviewed their history extensively. They have a pattern of choosing what they call freedom over survival. It appears to be a core aspect of their psychology. Thelvan was quiet for a long moment. Show me the communication again. Zethkal played the recording. The 7 high commanders watched Dr. Morrison deliver his simple refusal. They watched him explain the human perspective on dignity and choice. They watched him end the communication on his own terms. When it finished, the chamber was silent. He's correct about the consequences, Thelvan said finally. If we destroy Earth without securing submission, it sets a dangerous precedent. Other species may conclude that resistance is preferable to surrender. Then we must make the destruction so complete, so absolute, that no one would dare follow their example, Reknal said. That won't work, Zethkal said, then immediately regretted speaking out of turn. Forgive me, High Commander. But I believe that would only make the problem worse. Explain, Thelvan said. The humans are prepared to become martyrs. If we destroy them, we transform them into a symbol. Every conquered species will remember the humans who chose death over submission. We'll be forced to maintain control through fear alone, which is expensive and unstable. He pulled up data on the screens around the chamber. I've analyzed our current empire. 37 worlds show signs of passive resistance. Resource production is declining on 52 worlds. We maintain order through the threat of force, but the costs are increasing. If the human example inspires more resistance, the empire becomes unsustainable, Thelvan finished. You're suggesting we have a fundamental flaw in our expansion model. I'm suggesting that the 47 statements assume all species will eventually submit. The humans have demonstrated that assumption is false. We need a new protocol. High Commander Reknal's skin darkened with anger. 3,000 years of success, and you want to change everything because of one stubborn species? I want to change everything because that one stubborn species has revealed a weakness we didn't know existed, Zethkal replied. If we ignore it, we put the entire empire at risk. The debate continued for hours. Some high commanders argued for immediate destruction of Earth. Others advocated for new approaches. But slowly, grudgingly, consensus emerged around a radical idea. What if the Caltharians tried something they had never done before? What if they actually negotiated? When certainty becomes flexibility. 3 days after Dr. Morrison's refusal, a small Caltharian shuttle approached Earth. It contained only Commander Zethkal and a single aide. No weapons. No fleet support. Just 2 Caltharians requesting permission to land. The humans granted it. Dr. Morrison met them at the landing site, accompanied by representatives from Earth's various nations. The meeting took place in a simple conference room, not the grand chambers usually used for diplomatic events. The humans had deliberately chosen something informal. Zethkal stood before them, his 4 arms held in a posture that indicated respect among Caltharians. Dr. Morrison. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. You're welcome, Dr. Morrison replied. Though I'm surprised you came. I expected orbital bombardment, not conversation. That was the expected response according to our protocols, Zethkal admitted. But your refusal revealed something important. Our protocols are incomplete. They don't account for species who value freedom more than survival. Most species value both, Dr. Morrison said. The problem is your protocols don't offer both options. Zethkal gestured agreement. Which is why I'm here. The High Command has authorized me to explore alternatives to our standard procedures. This is unprecedented in Caltharian history. So you want to negotiate? Asked Ambassador Chen, one of Earth's senior diplomats. We want to understand, Zethkal corrected. Your species fascinates us. You're willing to die rather than submit. This defies our understanding of rational behavior. Before we can negotiate, we need to comprehend what drives that choice. Dr. Morrison smiled. Commander, the answer is simple. Humans don't see death as the worst possible outcome. We see loss of agency, loss of choice, loss of dignity as worse than death. We'd rather die standing than live kneeling. But you all die eventually anyway, Zethkal said. Whether standing or kneeling, the result is the same. Why does the manner of death matter? Because life is about more than just extending its duration, Dr. Morrison replied. It's about what you do with the time you have. It's about leaving the world better than you found it. It's about making choices that reflect your values. If we submit to your empire, we lose the ability to make those choices. We become extensions of your will rather than agents of our own. He leaned forward. Let me ask you something, Commander. In 3,000 years of conquest, have any of your subject species truly thrived? Or do they simply survive under your rule? Zethkal was quiet. He thought about the 156 species under Caltharian control. They were peaceful. Orderly. But were they happy? Did they create art, music, literature with passion and joy? Or did they simply go through the motions of existence? I don't know, he admitted finally. We measure success by stability and resource production. We've never measured happiness. That's the problem, Dr. Morrison said gently. You've built an empire on certainty and control. But life isn't certain or controllable. It's messy and unpredictable and sometimes irrational. And that's what makes it worth living. The test of understanding. Over the next 2 weeks, Zethkal remained on Earth. The High Command had given him an unusual directive. Learn about humans. Understand what makes them willing to die rather than submit. Find a way to bring Earth into the Dominion without using the 47 statements. It was the first time in Caltharian history that a commander had been ordered to understand before conquering. Dr. Morrison became Zethkal's guide to humanity. He took the Caltharian commander to museums and concerts. To protests and celebrations. To quiet moments in libraries and loud moments in sports stadiums. He showed Zethkal the full spectrum of human experience. You see chaos, Dr. Morrison explained as they watched a political debate where humans shouted competing ideas. We see freedom. The freedom to disagree. The freedom to argue for different visions of the future. The freedom to be wrong and learn from it. But this is inefficient, Zethkal observed. So much time wasted on debate when one correct answer could simply be imposed. Who decides which answer is correct? Dr. Morrison asked. You? Your High Command? What makes you certain you're right? We have 3,000 years of successful expansion. Success at what? You've conquered hundreds of species, but have you improved their lives? Have you made them happy? Or have you just made them obedient? The question haunted Zethkal. He began accessing Dominion records more carefully, looking not at resource production or stability metrics, but at what little information existed about the daily lives of conquered peoples. What he found troubled him deeply. Suicide rates among conquered species were significantly higher than pre-conquest levels. Creative output declined dramatically within a generation of subjugation. Birth rates dropped as populations lost hope for the future. The species survived, but they didn't thrive. They existed in a state of quiet despair. We've been measuring the wrong things, Zethkal told Dr. Morrison one evening as they sat in a small Earth cafe. Around them, humans laughed and argued and lived their messy, unpredictable lives. Yes, Dr. Morrison agreed. You measured obedience and called it success. You measured stability and called it peace. But real success is harder to measure. It's in the things people create when they're free to create. It's in the chances they take when they're free to fail. It's in the dreams they pursue when they're free to dream. But freedom creates chaos, Zethkal said. How do you maintain order? We don't maintain it. We negotiate it. Every day. Through laws we all agree to follow. Through social contracts we consent to uphold. Through constant, messy, inefficient debate about what's right and wrong. It's exhausting and frustrating and absolutely essential. Zethkal was beginning to understand. The Caltharian model of certainty and control created stability, but it also created stagnation. The human model of freedom and chaos created conflict, but it also created growth, innovation, and genuine happiness. The High Command won't accept this, Zethkal said. They'll say I've been compromised. That I've lost objectivity. Have you? Dr. Morrison asked. Zethkal thought carefully before answering. I've gained something I didn't have before. Perspective. I see now that there are multiple valid approaches to civilization. The Caltharian way isn't wrong, but it's not the only way. And it may not be the best way. So what will you do? I'll present my findings to the High Command. And then? Zethkal paused. And then I'll probably be relieved of my position. That takes courage, Dr. Morrison said. Saying something you know will cost you everything. Humans do it all the time, Zethkal replied. You were willing to die for your beliefs. I should at least be willing to risk my career for mine. The transformation. Zethkal's report to the High Command was unlike anything they had received before. He didn't just provide data on human military capability or resource potential. He provided a comprehensive analysis of human psychology, culture, and the fundamental incompatibility between human nature and Caltharian control. His conclusion was stark. The humans cannot be conquered. They can be destroyed, but they cannot be made to submit. Any attempt to force submission will result in either their extinction or a prolonged resistance that will drain Dominion resources for generations. High Commander Thelvan read the report 3 times. You're recommending we abandon Earth? No, High Commander. I'm recommending we try something new. Partnership instead of conquest. The chamber erupted in protest. High Commanders shouted over each other, their carefully maintained dignity cracking in the face of such a radical suggestion. Thelvan raised one hand for silence. Explain partnership. The humans have technologies we don't possess, Zethkal said. Their approach to problem solving is fundamentally different from ours. Where we seek single correct answers, they explore multiple possibilities. Where we value certainty, they embrace experimentation. They could make the Dominion stronger, not as subjects, but as allies. Allies? Rek-Nal practically spat the word. We are the Caltharian Dominion. We don't have allies. We have subjects. Then perhaps that's why our expansion has stalled, Zethkal said calmly. We've conquered 847 systems in 3,000 years. But in the last 500 years, we've only added 23 new systems. Our growth rate is declining. Our subject species are increasingly resistant. Our model is failing, and the humans have shown us why. He pulled up comparative data. Human civilization is only 10,000 years old, yet they've achieved technological parity with us in many fields. They've done this through cooperation, not conquest. Through debate, not dictation. Through freedom, not control. They have something we don't. The ability to adapt and innovate rapidly. Because they're chaotic and undisciplined, Rek-Nal said. Because they're free and creative, Zethkal countered. And that makes them valuable in ways we haven't considered. Thelvan studied the data for a long time. Finally, she spoke. What exactly are you proposing? A trial program. We offer Earth something we've never offered before. Voluntary association with the Dominion with full autonomy on internal matters. In exchange, they share their technologies and perspectives. We learn from each other instead of one dominating the other. That's not how the Dominion operates, Rek-Nal said. Then maybe it's time the Dominion learned to operate differently, Thelvan said quietly. Commander Zethkal is correct. Our expansion has stalled. Our subject species are increasingly restive. We measure ourselves by our size, but we're not growing stronger. We're growing more brittle. She looked around the chamber at her fellow high commanders. Perhaps the humans have given us an opportunity. Not just to gain one more subject world, but to fundamentally improve how we build our empire. The debate that followed lasted for days. In the end, the vote was close. For high commanders in favor of trying Zethkal's partnership model. 3 opposed. But it was enough. The Caltharian Dominion would attempt something it had never done before. It would negotiate as equals with a potential partner rather than dictating terms to a conquered subject. The new certainty. 6 months later, Dr. Morrison and Commander Zethkal stood together on the observation deck of a joint human Caltharian research station. Below them, Earth and the Caltharian flagship orbited in a carefully coordinated dance. The first partnership agreement in Caltharian history, Dr. Morrison said. How does it feel? Uncertain, Zethkal admitted. Which is appropriate, I suppose. We're learning to embrace uncertainty. The agreement had taken months to negotiate. Earth maintained complete sovereignty but agreed to cultural and technological exchange programs. Humans would serve as advisors to help the Dominion transition other species from subject status to partnership status. In return, Caltharians would share their advanced physics and medical technologies. More importantly, both sides had agreed to learn from each other. To challenge their own assumptions. To grow beyond what they had been. 3 of my high commanders resigned rather than support this, Zethkal said. They see partnership as weakness. And what do you see it as? Dr. Morrison asked. Evolution. The Dominion survived for 3,000 years by being certain and unchanging. But the universe changes whether we acknowledge it or not. If we don't adapt, we'll be left behind. You humans taught us that. Dr. Morrison smiled. We taught you to question your certainties. That's the most important lesson we have to offer. News of the Earth-Caltharian partnership spread across the galaxy. Other species under Dominion control watched with hope and curiosity. Some of them began requesting renegotiation of their status. The Dominion, for the first time, agreed to consider their requests. It was slow. It was messy. It was uncertain. And it worked. Over the next decade, 37 species transitioned from subject status to partnership status. Resource production increased. Innovation flourished. The quiet despair that had characterized much of the Dominion began to lift. The Caltharians learned to embrace debate, to consider multiple perspectives, to accept that they didn't have all the answers. It was uncomfortable and often frustrating. But it made them stronger. And it all began because one human spoke a single sentence. We're not interested. 4 words that changed an empire. Epilogue, the legacy of no. Years later, Zethkal gave a lecture at the newly established Interspecies Academy, where beings from across the Dominion learned about diplomacy and cooperation. His topic was the failure of certainty. For 3,000 years, he told the audience of hundreds of different species, the Caltharian Dominion operated on absolute certainty. We knew we were superior. We knew conquest was the only path. We knew that all rational beings would choose survival over freedom. Then we met humanity. And they said no. He paused, letting that sink in. Not because they were irrational. Not because they didn't understand the consequences. But because they had a different certainty than ours. They were certain that freedom mattered more than survival. That dignity was worth dying for. That choosing your own fate was the most fundamental right any being could possess. Their certainty challenged our certainty. And we discovered something important. When 2 certainties collide, both should be questioned. Not to destroy them, but to test them. To refine them. To see if they still serve the purposes they were meant to serve. He looked out at the diverse audience before him. The old Dominion would have destroyed Earth and called it success. The new Dominion learned from Earth and became something better. That's the lesson I hope you all take from this. Certainty is comfortable, but growth requires uncertainty. Progress requires questioning. Strength requires the humility to admit you might be wrong. After the lecture, a young human student approached him. Commander Zethkal, do you ever regret changing the Dominion? Do you miss the certainty of the old ways? Zethkal considered the question carefully. Sometimes, he admitted. Certainty is easier than doubt. Following protocols is easier than making difficult decisions. But easy isn't the same as right. He gestured to the academy around them, filled with species learning to work together as partners rather than conquerors and conquered. This is harder. But it's better. And that's what matters. The student smiled and walked away, leaving Zethkal alone with his thoughts. He looked out the window at the stars and thought about all the changes that had come from one moment, one conversation, one simple refusal. Dr. Morrison had been right. Life wasn't about certainty. It was about choice. And the Caltharian Dominion had finally learned to give beings the choice to shape their own destinies. It had taken 3,000 years and one stubborn human to teach them that lesson. But they had learned. And the galaxy was better for it.